What led to the suspension of Bernard King remains one of the most troubling chapters in NBA history. Bernard King was a Hall of Fame scorer who averaged 22.5 points per game over his career. He was the league's scoring champion in 1984-85 and a four-time All-Star who led the New York Knicks to consecutive playoff appearances. But behind the highlight reels lay a darker story of alcoholism, legal troubles, and suspensions that nearly destroyed his career. King's troubles began long before he reached the NBA. Growing up in Fort Greene during the 1960s and 70s, he endured an abusive relationship with his mother in a small apartment. To cope with this pain, he developed what he called a game face, a psychological shield to escape and defeat the trauma of his upbringing. This coping mechanism became part of who he was. When King went to college at the University of Tennessee, new problems emerged. As a shy young man from Brooklyn thrust into the Deep South, he faced racism and deep personal insecurities. It was here that he first turned to alcohol as a social outlet and escape. The habit grew once he turned professional. Despite early NBA success, King described being very unhappy during his rookie year. Even after scoring 30 or 35 points, he would go home to an empty apartment with no one to share the joy with. As King's alcoholism deepened, the incidents became more public and dangerous. He drove with a quart of alcohol in his system and had no memory of the journey. On another occasion, he was found slumped over the wheel of his car in the middle of a Brooklyn intersection at 5 in the morning during his second NBA season. The addiction even affected games. During a playoff game, a heckler's taunt asking if it was time for a drink nearly provoked King into a physical fight. The impact on his career was immediate and severe. His first team, the New Jersey Nets, decided he was beyond help despite his talent and traded him to the Utah Jazz. The Nets felt his off-court issues were too much to handle. The pattern continued in Utah. Although he began rehabilitation there, the Jazz also despaired of him and traded him to the Golden State Warriors after he played only 19 games while seeking substance abuse treatment. These trades were direct consequences of a life spiraling out of control. King's legal troubles began during his college years. In July 1977, at the University of Tennessee, he was charged with theft of a videotape machine, though this charge was dropped. Just 5 days later, he faced arrest for prowling and marijuana possession. He pleaded guilty to resisting arrest and marijuana possession, receiving a $50 fine and 60-day suspended sentence for each charge. The most serious crisis came on January 1, 1980, while King played for the Utah Jazz. A woman in Salt Lake City brought serious allegations against him, leading to 5 felony counts of forced sexual abuse and sodomy. The Utah Jazz immediately suspended King indefinitely without pay upon learning of these charges. This suspension was the most significant of his career and came at a critical time when his personal life collided directly with his professional obligations. The legal proceedings concluded with King pleading no contest to reduced charges, 2 misdemeanor counts of attempted forcible sexual abuse. This plea was influenced by polygraph tests indicating King was too intoxicated to remember the incident. He received a $2,000 fine and 2 concurrent 1-year suspended sentences. However, King won a binding arbitration hearing through the NBA Players Association, leading to his reinstatement and restoration of back pay. This incident forced King to confront his alcoholism seriously. He described this admission as saving his own life, recognizing it was the only reason he was still playing basketball. He confessed to living very dangerously and felt fortunate his actions had not led to more arrests or harm to others. This realization led him to a nearly month-long stay at St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica, California, and joining Alcoholics Anonymous. King approached recovery with intense determination, famously stating he thrived on adversity and only started fighting when his back was to the wall. He understood the stakes, viewing this as his last opportunity. If he started drinking again, he would not have any chance left. The transformation was remarkable. He became an introspective 24-year-old man, shedding his reckless reputation. During his time with Golden State, he became a pillar in the Oakland community, visiting the local children's hospital and planning to speak to teenagers about alcoholism's dangers. This turnaround culminated in King being named NBA Comeback Player of the Year for the 1981 season, an almost unanimous choice after averaging 21.9 points on 58.8% shooting, The award reflected his victory over addiction and a shift from a life where basketball was everything to one where it was just one of the things he did. More than a decade later, King faced another suspension under very different circumstances with the Washington Bullets in January 1993. He had been sidelined since the 1990-91 season due to a significant knee injury, but was adamant he had recovered and was ready to play. The Bullets were hesitant to activate him, reportedly for financial reasons. Frustration boiled over, leading to King being suspended for 4 days without pay for conduct detrimental to the club. Reports allege King had pushed coach Wes Unseld during practice and told general manager John Nash he would disrupt practices if not activated. Nash publicly stated they would not be held hostage by King's demands. While alcoholism and legal troubles plagued King's early career, devastating injuries defined his later years. At the height of his powers in 1985, leading the league in scoring and playing at MVP level for the Knicks, King suffered a catastrophic injury. On March 23, 1985, during a game against Kansas City, King planted his right leg while attempting to block a dunk. The result was devastating: a torn ACL, torn meniscus, and lateral condyle fracture of the femur. The injury forced him to miss the entire 1985-86 season and all but 6 games of 1986-87. At that time, no NBA player had returned to form after such a potentially career-ending injury. His own physical therapist acknowledged no basketball player had ever made it all the way back from such damage. King embarked on rehabilitation completely out of the media spotlight. The journey was agonizing, both physically and mentally. He woke from nightmares and sweat so profuse he had to change clothes. A month after surgery, when his cast was removed, he did not recognize his own leg. His knee was swollen larger than his thigh due to severe muscle atrophy. Looking in the mirror, he asked himself if he was going to play again. His determination was fierce. Confined to a hospital bed in his basement and later a wheelchair, he was blocked by a gate from reaching a water cooler. Instead of waking his wife, he pulled himself up the stairs, retrieved pliers, and returned to dismantle the gate. He knew right then he was going to make it back. Against all odds, King returned to play in the final 6 games of 1986-87 for the Knicks, averaging 22.7 points per game. However, the Knicks released him, perhaps feeling he had not fully regained his explosiveness. Signing with Washington for 1987-88, King adapted his game from a dominant post fadeaway scorer to more of a cutting threat. The pinnacle of his comeback arrived in 1990-91. 6 years after his devastating injury, King was named an NBA All-Star for the 4th time, averaging 28.4 points per game, 3rd best behind only Karl Malone and Michael Jordan. He scored 44 points against Jordan's Bulls and dropped 52 against Denver. He became the first player in any major sport to make an All-Star team after tearing an ACL. Unfortunately, King's legal troubles did not end with retirement. In 1994, at age 37 and 1 year after leaving the league, he was arrested in New York for allegedly choking a 22-year-old woman while intoxicated. He was charged with 3rd-degree assault. A decade later, in 2004, another disturbing incident occurred when King was arrested for assault and harassment stemming from an altercation with his wife at a Manhattan hotel. These post-career incidents had broader consequences. In the late 1990s, his nomination to the New Jersey Sports and Exposition Board was withdrawn due to several arrests for abuse of women. In 2004, he was removed as an honoree of the Brooklyn Public Library following the spousal abuse charge. King's story reveals the complex relationship between trauma, resilience, and self-destruction. His game face, born from childhood abuse, served him well on the court and in comebacks, but may have masked internal pain that fueled destructive behaviors. His journey illustrates the non-linear path toward recovery, with legal issues post-retirement complicating any narrative of complete redemption. Bernard King's legacy is ultimately a complex tapestry of brilliance, fragility, and unyielding fighting spirit. His narrative transcends sports, offering a raw look at human vulnerability in the face of overwhelming adversity. While his induction into the Hall of Fame rightfully acknowledged his status as one of basketball's great scorers, his story challenges us to consider how we measure greatness and understand redemption.